Jessica Nguyen.
Here.
We have Greg Ferguson.
Here.
And Jerron Hollis.
Here.
Remotely, do we have Councilwoman Monica Peters? Councilwoman Peters, are you with us? Okay. Melody Burnett, are you with us?
Yes.
And Patrick Chapin. Is Patrick with us? No. Councilwoman Peters, have one more time.
Yes, I realized that I was on mute, and so I unmuted.
All right, all right. Do we have any other members of council joining us today?
This is Wesley Hudson. I'm here.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Hudson. All right. We'll call this session to order. We have minutes from our October 27th session to approve. Are there any changes or updates to the minutes that anyone would like to make prior to approval? If not, I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 27th session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Greg Ferguson. Roll call. Jessica Nguyen, Jessica Nguyen?
Yes.
Tom Conley?
Yes.
Ray Gibbs?
Yes.
Melody Burnett?
Yes.
Jerron Hollis?
Aye.
Greg Ferguson?
Yes.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
All right, that motion is approved. Meaning the minutes are approved. All right, so we'll get into our agenda today. First item on the agenda is discussion regarding the establishment of the City of High Point as the central hub for city marketing. At this time, I will turn it over to Jerron Hollis for remarks regarding this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the discussions that we've had from the standpoint of marketing, looking at it in a way that essentially says that the City of High Point is the unique entity that has some interest in every piece of what each organization is doing, our partners that are at the table, and that the city is, with our marketing division and some of the resources that we have, we're uniquely positioned to be able to sort of stay at the table. That's our full-time job, so to speak. And so it gives some standardization, gives some consistency, and allows us to kind of lean on the partners that we have at the table with their levels of expertise as we get to their specific areas where they have direct interest. So we would always need the market authority at the table or CVB at the table. They have specific interests dealing with the brand of City of High Point. But from a collective standpoint, the city can bring those pieces together, and we would be positioned to make some resource, some decisions about which ways we interpret the direction from council and senior staff about pulling those together and make it easier so that we have that final responsibility. So that's a part of the discussion. If it's determined whichever direction we go when we narrow down that particular focus, the City of High Point, with some of our internal resources, specifically with our marketing division, we do have a unique ability and responsibility to kind of bring all these things together.
Okay. Thank you, Jerron. Any discussion or opinions on this from any of our stakeholders? How do you feel about making the city the central hub for information and direction of this task force, of this committee? I know each of you have your own campaigns that have been running, and so in the in the spirit of bringing them together in a kind of a cohesive message, I'd really love some opinions on how you feel about this particular item.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
from the Market Authority perspective, we're very much in favor of the city being the central hub.
I'm sorry, Tom. Could you, for those listening, before you speak, could you say your name so that
Sure.
those who are listening know who's speaking? Thank you.
Sorry about that. This is Tom Conley with the High Point Market Authority. We are very interested in the city maintaining its role for a central hub. I believe it's great to have them as a clearinghouse. And while you have heard about the activities that we are undertaking in the Market District, we want to make sure that we're consistent with what goes on for the city of High Point, because the Market District cannot exist without the help and cooperation for the city of High Point. I guess my only question, whether it would be you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Hollis, is, are you talking about doing some kind of branding in the entire city, or primarily in the core business district? In the how does that look from a physical geographical standpoint?
Yeah, I think emerging from the strategic retreat, this is Councilman Holmes, emerging from the strategic retreat last year, we talked about this being a focus of downtown and marketing there. I think in further discussions, there may need to be some clarification or even amending of scope. And I think that's a discussion that I think should be had amongst this group. Maybe not today, but I think also looking at what particular campaigns are being currently run, how far those campaigns have been executed, looking at duplicating efforts, making sure that the voice of the people are captured. That I think we do need to, as a task force, look at this, look at the scope of what we're doing here, and make sure that we're doing the right thing and capturing the right message going forward. So I'm very open to everyone on this committee with your inputs on that particular scope. So Tom, I guess to answer your question, and I'll let Jerron jump in here as well. I think that is open for interpretation.
This is Ray Gibbs at Forward High Point. Kind of following up a little bit of both of those. I mean, again, I think what I talked about in that first meeting, the presentation, is for us really to kind of get a handle on what it is we're marketing or branding, and because if it's the city and the community at whole is one thing, but then there's all the different areas within the city that may in themselves have different messages to put out, and are marketing towards a different audience as we get into those. And we went through in our meeting last week for Forward High Point, we kind of were looking at, hearing some of the things from economic development, and they're out, marketing the broader city, and their audience is all the different industries we have to go. And their audience is very national. We're basically, I have more of a focus. I mean, I'm looking at basically probably 2 square miles of the city. So, and our message is really to the visitor here or the person that's coming downtown. So that really becomes a different message. And Tom has a broad message, but a small area that he's bringing it to. So I do think that the city has a real role there, because we do have our marketing as High Point as a place to live. And then there's different neighborhoods, and that's something that likely will involve, the real estate industry. If it's shopping, the different shopping areas that come to play. So we do have different regions of town, different areas that probably have different messages, that we're going to bring. So, we're kind of getting ours a little bit further hopefully that will inspire that. But there does need to be some place where we're all coming together, or else, we're going to have this fragmented message. I mean, Tom and I and Jessica have been talking pretty closely, so we're trying to make sure, because basically we truly overlap, so that our messages are in sync with each other.
Mr. Chair, Jerron Hollis, Communications Public Engagement Director. To kind of echo what some of you have been saying, I'll start with an example. We were able to work successfully with the Market Authority leading into this last market on a campaign that many of you have seen. We did a few videos to underline the importance of the market to the community and some of the safety measures that we had in place. That's something that is uniquely the Market Authority, where we were able to assist in them achieving a specific goal. I think when we go on a larger scale, from a staff standpoint, we're looking at being as efficient as possible with limited resources. So we can run the risk of being redundant. I mean, we don't need to do an independent campaign talking about the Market Authority when they're already doing that. There are certain areas. So I think for us, it would look like narrowing down what it is that we're selling, who it is that we're selling it to, and where it is. And then we take the collective resources of each entity that's at the table and help to work toward that unique goal of this marketing campaign. But it would not be, in my mind, feasible to reproduce something that's already out there. So this would be, if it's something that we're able to, from the city standpoint, to be able to really wrap our hands around, it would be very specific, and it would be something that would be unique that we're not already doing. And that gets back to the redundancy point. So I think to Ray's point and to Tom's point and what we've been saying here, I think that's the focus. And I think as some other areas of the agenda, as far as narrowing down what that looks like. But I think the essential question is, are we doing something that is uniquely the city of High Point's responsibility? And in doing that, being mindful not to reproduce something that's already out there.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to, this is Tom Conley again. First of all, I'd like to compliment Jerron and his colleagues. The program that they did for us was fantastic. And the beauty of what he did was that it allowed us to take it and send it to our audience, which is a trade audience. But it was so well done and covered so many different aspects of the community that then the city could push it out to their audience too. And so I think Jerron's absolutely correct in that we don't want to be duplicative in our effort, but yet, sort of marketing 101 is, who is your audience? And the city has a much broader audience than we will ever have. And it is not our role, in my opinion, to speak to the community without the support and background and clearance of the city, because we're funded by the city. We're a big part of this city, and we don't want to confuse any messaging. So we've really enjoyed that relationship, and I'd like to make sure we can continue to have that relationship so there's no confusion to the various audiences that we each communicate to.
Absolutely.
Right. And Mr. Chairman, if I may say something, thank you, Tom, and everyone who said something. You're all correct. I don't know if everyone has read the minutes from our retreat, but I do know that one of the thoughts that we had, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we really need to focus on that downtown Catalyst area. That's like our number one priority. And hopefully with everyone else's campaigns, like I know as far as like in furniture and stuff, and I know, Tom, I'm super excited about HPXD that's trying to get people here year round. But, that Catalyst project is going to help all the other organizations to bring people to High Point. And so I do think that, we are right now just super focused on that downtown Catalyst area and marketing it so that we can all benefit from that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Peters. For those of you who are remote, don't want to certainly leave you out of the discussion. Councilman Hudson and Melody Burnett, do you have any comments on this agenda item?
Hi, this is Melody Burnett with Visit High Point. I agree with John. I think he is the perfect clearinghouse. He and his team are the perfect clearinghouse for this particular project. I know that from a Visit High Point standpoint, we tend to lean on the city anytime that we have communications that need to go out to the community. Case in point, we do mailings through the utility bill. They are very active within our ambassadors program as well. In regards to Councilwoman Peters' comments regarding the downtown Catalyst area, currently we are assessing the new assets that are coming to our community and coming rather quickly. And there'll be 8 new visitor-centric assets that will be introduced just in 2021. So it's really imperative that we know exactly what each asset can do in terms of each audience, whether that be a visitor or the local audience or even the market authority's audience as a designer. So I think that in terms of building that experience is going to be quite imperative as we're looking at some kind of branding around that. So that's what we're focused on right now. And I just want to read this real quick too. I know that in talking with Forward High Point, we're very much talking about the visitor audience. I'm going to steal a quote from Mara Gass from the Irving CVB. She used to serve with Destinations International. If you build a place where people want to visit, you'll build a place where people want to live. And if you build a place where people want to live, you'll build a place where people have to work. If you build a place where people want to work, you'll build a place where business wants to be. And if you build a place where business wants to be, you'll have a built place where people want to visit. So it's all very much intertwined. And I just thank you for giving all of us a voice on this committee because it's just so important in what we're doing.
Thank you, Melody. Were there any other comments from our remote participants? Okay.
I hear it all, and I echo everything that everyone has said. It's right on target.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Councilman Hudson. Well, I don't know if this is an item where we have to vote on this. I'm not sure if this is something that we have to vote on. Considering that this task force is already established, this is more of a structural alignment within the task force. So I don't think this requires any vote to ratify this. So I think from now on, as we proceed, we'll identify the city as the central hub for the efforts going forth in terms of how we receive data or distribute data. No.
Chairman, Greg Ferguson, Assistant City Manager. I think in helping do that, kind of be that central hub, what would be good is really to establish a partner, I'm gonna call it a spreadsheet, to simplify things, just to identify where the different partners are in their process. We've got, where some market authorities hired the firm so far, so getting that contact information, who they've hired, maybe what the deliverable was that they identified in their contract, certainly Forward High Point, kind of where they're at in that process. And we can use that to share primarily among the different agencies that are involved. And then as we see areas of collaboration, maybe indicate that, and it could be more than a spreadsheet, but at least a basic spreadsheet to kind of keep us all on the same page. And then I think the other part would be to corporately identify any other partners that either aren't on that sheet or that we become aware of that are promoting the city through whatever marketing means, and just kind of get it maybe as part of our minutes, perhaps.
It's a great point, Greg. So I think it's establishing kind of a database of what we've been doing, all the efforts. I think that's a great idea. I think that's something that we can move forward on. Jerron, any idea on how to begin this process? What will we need to do to begin this, to establish this process? What would that look like? How would you like to receive this information?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, Councilman Hudson, please.
I'm sorry. We were established by City Council for exactly the purpose that you just said. So the task force already is tasked by City Council to be a liaison. We will give council a monthly report of progress. That's already established in why we are a task force.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Councilman Hudson. But I think we were discussing Mr. Ferguson's idea about us bringing together the information on the individual campaigns, where they are in execution, and then making sure that as we go forward with this task force, that we all have visibility of all of the working campaigns from all of our partners on the task force. So I was engaging Jerron on how he would like to receive this information and creation of this database.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jerron Hollis here, Communications Public Engagement Director. I think from a staff standpoint, we've got the resources to be able to reach out and pull those agencies and that information in as part of the tools that we have for discussion. To Councilmember Hudson's point, that will be a part of those updates that are representations of the work that we've been doing. So we're able to do that internally without any additional strain on what we're already doing. So that wouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay, great. So Jerron and his department will initiate contact with all our member partners to compile the information on campaigns and where they are in their execution phase. Do we have any other comments on this agenda item?
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Conley. I'm going to reach out to the group that we've contracted to do their work to see if they would be willing to visit with this task force and talk about process. Jerron, I think, is very correct in identifying the various organizations and where they stand. But our group is engaged in a process which may be enlightening for everybody. I'm not suggesting it is the only process, because that's very clear that it is not. But not only recognizing what everybody's doing, but maybe we can come together around a process that would then move this all along in a timely fashion and be consistent with what the City Council wants in terms of winding up our efforts.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Any other discussion points, comments before we move on in the agenda? Okay. Well, seeing as how we're talking about narrowing down scope, we're talking about finding out who our audience truly is for this campaign. Our next agenda item, discussion item, would be using a community survey to gauge the High Point community priorities. I think this could work twofold. Could not only allow us to identify the different audiences within the city, but also what's important to them in capturing the voice as we go forward with our message. So I'm now going to open up the floor to any comments about this agenda item and what we believe we could capture from this, any concerns or pitfalls about this, kind of get it out here to see if there's a broad consensus on how to move forward with capturing the voice of the multiple communities that we have within the city of High Point.
One of the things I think with surveys is unless we're really specific in what we're trying to get an answer for, they're not going to yield a lot of information. If it's, where do you shop for X, we can get that. If it's kind of open-ended, what do you think our brand should be? Now that's a whole other type of thing. How do you want to rate that might be a different question. So I think the surveys, an idea, there's a little, sometimes I've liked surveys as a whole. I haven't always liked them. I prefer testing theories, with those, or use of focus groups, where I can dig deeper into a question is, do you like this or not, to find out a little bit why, or our brand, that you can start getting a little closer to that. I think the same thing, a commercial company does with a product, as we're getting through. But at this point, I don't know if we're even to the point of what are we surveying. I mean, there's questions I think the big question for all of us is, if it's going to be reaching our own public, is how do we get you information? I mean, that I think is a struggle we're all making, is how do we reach with information? And that I think is a question. But to start off with a survey, I think is going to be, until we narrow down the questions, I think we're a little premature.
This is Jessica Wynn from the Market Authority. I can definitely echo Ray's thoughts. I think a focus group, a survey, it's just they answer the question and you don't really get to follow up with a why, or get any clarification from it. Now, I think we'll have to investigate a little further in this process to decide whether that's right or wrong for us. But I will say that I think making it very clear as to the area that you're asking the citizens about. I think if you just say downtown in general, a lot of people will get us confused with the market district. But if you, highlight what Councilman Peters said, that we're really focusing on the Catalyst area, and maybe even include a map of that area, be really, really specific, I think that'll be kind of key to get very clear results. A focus group certainly is something that allows for a lot more dialogue, but can be a lot more work. And I see the next bullet on the agenda, and I'm not going into that, but researching marketing campaigns in other communities. Sometimes it's very enlightening to see what didn't work or what did work for other cities that are somewhat our size or structured the way we are. There was, in our process of trying to find different companies to reach out to, I did find that there were a good couple of cities that actually posted their results and their process on their city website. So I was able to, without calling anybody, kind of read through their application form and some of their processes for harvesting ideas and things like that. So I think that part will definitely will give us some answers to some clarification on that.
Ray Gibbs with Forward High Point. And I think as we start getting into doing either or both, I think it's also important that, because I think our messages are going to be different, is that we start looking at different aspects of our community. And so not just doing a broad survey and saying, this is the opinion of High Point, and would help me and for downtown is, somebody who lives, in the north, their thoughts on High Point and what we have to offer in our brand is very different than somebody who lives in the core, in our other neighborhoods, different neighborhoods around. Their opinions are going to be completely what services we have to offer. They may be perfect for them, they may not be. So, we unfortunately try to look at things as a whole too much. And we're really a city of neighborhoods. And, how we are looking at that and how do we reach those different people? How we reach somebody in the core is very different than somebody we're going to reach in the north or somebody in the south or the west.
Mr. Chair, Jerron Hollis, Communications, Public Engagement. Two things come to mind. One, it goes back to Mr. Conley's remarks earlier, I think if we talk about the survey, focus groups, or even the last part of the agenda with what other marketing campaigns other communities are doing, I think it falls under that umbrella of process. So we might find as we go through this that the focus group or the survey would be a good third step or second step or fourth step. So I think this would fall under that umbrella of a plan and a process. Marketing is a very exact science. And there are, talking earlier about leveraging resources, if we have an agency at the table that has a relationship with a marketing firm where we're seeing results, why not leverage that instead of trying to reinvent the wheel? I think the other part to Ray's point, I think we're gonna constantly have the discussion about what's alike and what's different. I think there's a big difference in trying to attract people from North High Point to come to the Catalyst downtown area. That's a different strategy than, say, trying to attract people from other parts of the country to come in. Those are different approaches, different strategies. So you'll hear as we go through each of these points, everything's going to come back to a very narrow focus about what we're trying to achieve. And then once we figure out what we're trying to achieve, figuring out the collective talents of the people at the table in order to achieve those results. But it has to be really refined, because going after a particular neighborhood in High Point, if that's what we're saying we're trying to do, bring people from North High Point downtown, or are we trying to bring people from other communities? We're going after young professionals? Are we going after, empty nesters? There's a lot of discussion and topics have to be refined, especially when you have a tight budget.
And as we get into that message, that the difference if we're trying to come to High Point or downtown High Point for dinner versus coming to High Point to locate your business, or as a place to live, they're totally different messages, even though they may be geared toward some of the same audiences, but they're different messages.
Jerron Hollis again, and I think in Melody's presentation that she did talking about some of the different groups and some of the different demographics, I think she gave us a good snapshot of some of the areas that will be important for us to focus on as we talk about continued process. That we do have those groups, we do have those segmented groups, different opinions, different wants, different needs, different disposable income. So there's a lot of things that we need to consider, but again, we have to be very specific about what we're trying to achieve, or we could be working on this forever. And then the other part, I think it's important to understand that there's work that's going to be ongoing between these meetings. I mean, we have these broad discussions here at the task force, but if this is going to be productive and be successful, a group like ours working behind the scenes so that there's something to report at the next meeting and at subsequent meetings, that's a part of the process. So thinking about actionable things between these meetings is going to be the difference in success and failure.
Excellent point. Thank you, Jerron. Thank you, Ray, for your comments. Any of our remote participants have any comments on this bullet item?
This is Melody Burnett with Visit High Point. To Jerron's point, I know we're talking very broad right now, but anytime that I'm working on these committees with City Council, I always think about the City Council's goals. I can't spit them all off the top of my head right now, but I know that at one point it was to increase the engaged young professionals by 25%. If that's the case, and that's still the case, then we can't ignore looking at that group, interviewing that group, focusing that group in order to get them more engaged, living, working, playing here. So I think we need to work broad and then get narrowly focused. Love the subcommittees or the sub-task force. I think that's the way to go. Anyway, those are just my comments.
Thank you. Um,
Chairman, I have a question. I don't know if anybody can answer this, but it's a question anyway. So do we have a time frame of when we're hoping to launch something or not?
I think that's going to be part of the narrowing of this project. Once we determine full scope, I think that will help us determine the time frame that we can get something out, Councilwoman Peters. So I think what we're all hearing here, if I'm not mistaken, I think that there's got to be some work amongst this group to determine the actual scope based on some of the initiatives from our strategic retreat. We've got to bring those together and then identify the scope of this project, including timeframes. So I don't want to I don't want to misspeak here, but I think that's what I'm hearing from the discussions that we're having around these points in our last couple of meetings, is that we really need to get in to identifying what the full scope of this project is going to be, and once we have done that fully, then we start to look at how we put something together that we can deliver to the city. I hope I got that sentiment here from the rest of the task force. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for the rest of the task force here, but I think that should be our short-term immediate goal, is to narrow that down.
Perfect. Thank you.
Chairman, I would respectfully suggest that because of the COVID situation and because of what the experts say is going to be a slow recovery, we probably have 2021 to get our act together.
Yeah.
And even though the weather here is pretty good, I mean, I would think if we could sort of target spring of 2022 to get everything done, and that includes signage, quite frankly, that ought to give us something that is doable, budgetable, and could be really exciting for this whole community.
Duly noted. Okay, I think that's a reasonable. We can fully discuss that as we move forward, but I don't think that's an unreasonable timeframe for as a deliverable. Okay. Any other comments before we move on to our last agenda item? Okay. And our last item on the agenda today, and Jessica led us into this, is research into marketing campaigns in other communities. I'm a big proponent of benchmarking. I believe that if you're undertaking something, you look around and see who's done what and something similar, and we, not necessarily adopt that, but we look at the structure of these campaigns and how it may fit us if we're a similar size city or a similar structured business. So I'm a big proponent of that. I believe that that's something that would benefit this task force overall and for the campaign that we're moving forward. And for some of you, Jessica's stated earlier, for some of you who have done that already, I would love to hear some results or outcomes that you had from previous campaigns that you guys have undertaken, benchmarked with other municipalities or other cities. Any collaborations that you guys have had on campaigns, and how we believe that we could integrate those into this campaign here.
This is Jessica Nguyen. I will also say too, as you start to research vendors that you may want to reach out to, or even, 505 Design, the one that we are working with now, comes to visit and discuss process with everybody. You'll also find that a lot of the vendors have their own work references, things that they've done, examples of things that they've done in different cities. we reached out to, I mean, High Point is kind of small. We're not a major city, but Market is also unique and very spread out. So we reached out to a wide variety of vendors that seem to have a very unique, diverse work experience background. And they were able to bring a lot of different scenarios to the table when we discussed and interviewed with them. So reaching out to some of those vendors and kind of, seeing what their past work was will also have a lot of answers for that question as well.
Ray Gibbs, Forward High Point. Nothing's popping in my head right now, but what I'll do is I'll kind of do some research on downtown programs around the country and try to come up with some best practice cities that I think have done a good job.
This is Jessica again. One city that's come to mind that I said, they posted it on their website, that very thorough what their application was and everything, was the city of Cary. They actually narrowed it down to 2 vendors, and they posted both of those 2 vendors' proposals, like final proposals on their website, and went into great detail about everything that they did. I can't quote anything off their website, but the city of Cary, I ended up reading quite a bit of that. They had a lot of detail on their website.
This is Melody from Visit High Point. Jessica just mentioned Cary, and I just want to add some others. If you want to look at comparable sizes, it would be Cary, Concord, Asheville, Greenville, North Carolina, and Wilmington that are in close city size. So we could certainly pull together some of those campaigns. And I mentioned Greenville in my presentation last month to you all. Just want to remind you of the social media campaign regarding their Emerald City branding, the Gem of the East. The branding looked on point. However, the folks that identified with that particular branding had a disconnect because they were associating it with College Town, hence why we might need to do that surveying piece. So anyway, just want to remind you guys of those cities.
Mr. Chair, Jerron Hollis, City of High Point. In looking at, I guess from a big picture standpoint, what you see in the marketing campaigns that you see in other cities, and I'll remind everyone that's listening, and Ray, you remember when we were looking at ways to approach building the stadium. Right. One of the early pieces was to see what other communities were doing, how they were successful, what they were doing with the downtowns, and picking off those pieces of information to come up with the most successful strategy. So in anything, those best practices, benchmarking, you're going to find that there's advantage there because, we all like to think that we're unique and, no one's like us, but the more you research, you start seeing that people have the same challenges, the same aspirations, and the same objectives. That being the case, there's a mix when you talk about your marketing campaigns. If you're trying to do a marketing campaign, there is what you'll see in other communities. One, relevance. The last thing you want is to Melody's point. Last thing you want is to have something that comes forth that doesn't speak to the time, doesn't speak to the challenges, doesn't speak to the environment. So being relevant is really important when you're talking about marketing, that you're actually reaching the people that you're trying to reach. And then another piece that is really important is to say, when you have this particular campaign in place, what is it that is unique about where you are, where there is a similar need, where you're expecting a similar outcome, so that you're able to really track to see what's the what success looks like. What are you looking for there? So I think those are important pieces to think about when you talk about marketing and branding, because sometimes you'll have something that was a really, really good idea in 2018, then COVID happens. Or you'll have something that was a really good idea in 2019, and then you'll have all of these protests and all the things that happen. So relevant, something that was relevant last year might not be relevant this year. So whatever you put in place has to be able to stand the test of time.
That's an excellent point, Jerron. I think, I'm sorry, any of our remote listeners have comments before I make a statement? Okay, this is Councilman Holmes. I think all excellent points to be made here today. I think as we continue to dig into this, I think Jerron's last point is the one I don't want us to miss. You know, we're a diverse city, we're a growing city, and I think what we do needs to reflect the collective character of the city and be relevant to our time. So, you know, looking around, looking at, you know, some of our contemporaries have done, how they've addressed some of the challenges in the environment that we're currently in, whether they be economic, whether they be COVID related, whether they be, you know, protest, social unrest. I don't think we can leave that out as we go forward. I think we have to have a campaign that captures High Point as it is and High Point as we hope it will be. So those are my remarks on that. And does anyone have any other comments regarding our last agenda item? Any other comments or questions, concerns?
This is Greg Ferguson, Assistant City Manager. I think some of the cities that Melody cited are great peer group cities for the state of North Carolina. We may want to look at some other Southeast regional or communities that are in that size. And I think about the work that's been done in Greenville, South Carolina over 30 or 35 years. They did something to kind of redirect their brand. So there may be some, so I would just suggest if members have any communities that they're very familiar with, that you seem impressed with in their effort, that you put those out on the table and at least do a little bit of background research to see other success stories out there.
Okay. I think, it's Councilman Holmes. I think now we have to come up with those actionable items, Jerron, that we spoke about. And so I think in the coming days, I think we can task members of this committee to pull some of this information together. Jerron, I'll leave that to you to understand how, you know, to design how you would like that information to come in, and outreach if that's appropriate.
Yes, that's appropriate, Jerron.
All right, great. Is there any other comments anyone have before we adjourn today for this session?
Mr. Chair, Jerron Hollis here, City of High Point. Our next meeting?
Next meeting, I know where we are in the monthly schedule. That's going to put us right at the Christmas weekend. So we may, you know, take the month off. And I just want to say thank you guys for being flexible on the date today. I know we were scheduled normally for Tuesday. You guys were all very flexible. So at this point, I don't think we'll have a date for the December meeting. If anything changes, I will alert the task force and let you guys know. But I think being the Christmas weekend, I think we probably should spend the time with our family and take some time to reassess and move, get ready to move into the new year. With that being said, I wish everyone a safe, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your families, enjoy your loved ones. Give thanks for everything that you have, because there are certainly those in the world far less fortunate than we. Please keep those people on the front of your mind. And if there are no other comments, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.